Ever get that feeling? That little shiver up your spine when something is just off? Not in a big, obvious way, but in a small, nagging detail that you can't quite put your finger on. That's where my story begins, on a lazy Saturday afternoon with a single, dusty painting. I've always been a sucker for estate sales. There's a certain magic to sifting through the remnants of a life well lived, a treasure hunt where you never know what you'll find. Usually, I come home with an old book or a quirky piece of furniture. This time, I came home with a mystery. It was tucked away in a corner of a stuffy attic, leaning against a stack of forgotten photo albums. The painting was simple, a watercolor of a quaint two-story house nestled among trees. The style was a bit dated, maybe from the 70s or 80s, but it had a certain charm. As I looked closer, my breath caught in my throat. I knew this house. It was Asterisk. My Asterisk house. There was no doubt about it. The slightly crooked porch railing, the big oak tree in the front yard whose branches I was always meaning to trim, the specific shade of blue on the shutters, it was all there. It felt like a bizarre coincidence. Who would paint my house, and how did it end up here, miles away at a random estate sale? I had to have it. After a bit of haggling, I bought it for a steal and carefully placed it in my car, my mind buzzing with questions. Back home, I leaned the painting against the living room wall, right across from the front door. It was an uncanny mirror image of the view from my driveway. My girlfriend, Clara, got home a little later. "What's this?" she asked, dropping her keys. I grinned. "Look familiar?" Her eyes widened. "Wait, is that our house? That's so weird. Where did you get it?" We spent the next hour marveling at the strange find. We pointed out all the tiny details the artist had captured perfectly. It was both fascinating and a little unsettling. The painting felt like a snapshot from the past, a ghost of my own home. But as the initial excitement wore off, Clara frowned, her head tilted. "Something's different," she said, squinting at the canvas. She pointed to the second floor, on the side of the house that faces the woods. "There," she said. "That window?" "We don't have a window there." I looked, and she was right. In the painting, right where my home office is, there was a small, square window that simply didn't exist on the real house. My office has a solid wall. I'd spent countless hours in that room. I knew every inch of it. "Maybe the artist just took some creative liberties," I suggested, trying to rationalize it. But Clara shook her head. "It doesn't feel like it. Everything else is so exact. Why add a random window?" It was a good question. The painting was almost photorealistic in its accuracy, except for this one glaring addition. That night, I couldn't sleep. The painting sat in the living room, and I could almost feel it looking back at me. The phantom window was all I could think about. Was it a mistake? A creative choice? Or something else? The next morning, fueled by coffee and a lack of sleep, I decided to investigate. I went up to my office, the room where the window was supposed to be. I ran my hand along the smooth, uninterrupted drywall. I knocked on it, solid nothing. I checked the blueprints for the house that we got when we bought it. The plans, dated from 1965, showed a solid wall, just as it was now. No window. There was no record of any renovations or changes ever being made to that wall. This just made things stranger. If the house was never built with a window there, why would anyone paint one? My next thought was the previous owners. I managed to track down the son of the couple who had lived here before us. I called him, feeling a bit foolish. "Hi, this is a weird question," I started, "but I live in your parents' old house. Did they ever do any renovations to the upstairs office?" He was quiet for a moment. "No," he said finally. "Not that I remember. My dad did everything by the book." "Why do you ask?" I explained about the painting. He was as baffled as I was. A painting of the house, with a window that isn't there. "That's odd. Sorry, I can't help you." I was at a dead end. For the next few days, life went on, but the painting loomed. Every time I walked past it, my eyes were drawn to that non-existent window. It felt like a riddle I was supposed to solve. Clara thought I was getting a little obsessed, and maybe she was right. One evening, I was working late in my office, trying to ignore the mystery hanging in my living room. I was getting frustrated with the project and leaned back in my chair, staring blankly at the wall where the window should be. On a whim, I got up and knocked on it again, this time more methodically, tapping every few inches. Thud, thud, thud. And then, a different sound. A hollow sound. My heart started pounding. It was a small section, maybe 3 feet by 3 feet, right in the center of the wall. It sounded completely different from the rest. I grabbed a utility knife and, my hand shaking slightly, cut a small, exploratory hole in the drywall. I peered inside with a flashlight. It wasn't empty. Behind the drywall was another layer. It looked like old, weathered wood. Plywood, maybe. My mind raced. Why would someone put drywall over a section of plywood on an exterior wall? Unless they were covering something up. The next day was a Saturday. I told Clara my plan. She looked nervous, but was too curious to stop me. Armed with a pry bar and a hammer, he went to work. I carefully cut away the drywall around the hollow-sounding section. Underneath, just as I'd seen, was a square of old plywood, nailed securely to the wall studs. This was definitely not part of the original construction. With a deep breath, I wedged the pry bar under the edge of the plywood and pulled. It groaned in protest, but with a final heave, the nails gave way and the board came loose. And there it was. Staring back at me from the shadows was a window. It was a small, square window, just like in the painting, but it had been boarded up from the outside and covered with drywall on the inside. It was completely hidden. My hands trembled as I touched the old wooden frame. It was real. The painting hadn't been a work of fiction. It was a depiction of a truth I never knew existed. But the discovery of the window only opened up a bigger question. Why was it covered up? And who covered it? We spent the rest of the weekend carefully removing the boards from the outside. The window itself was grimy but intact. As sunlight streamed into my office for the first time from that wall, it felt like I had solved the puzzle. The final piece fell into place. A week later, an elderly woman who lived down the street stopped by while I was mowing the lawn. She'd lived in the neighborhood for over 50 years. She commented on the new window. "Oh, I see you've uncovered the old window," she said with a smile. "I'm so glad. It was a shame when the Millers covered it up." The Millers. That was the family who owned the house 2 owners before me, back in the late 70s. "Why did they cover it?" I asked, my heart skipping a beat. Her smile faded a little. "Well," she said, lowering her voice, "they had a young son, a curious boy. He claimed he kept seeing a face in that window at night, looking in from the woods. It scared him so much, he refused to sleep in his own room. His parents thought it was just bad dreams, but to calm him down, they eventually just boarded it up. I guess everyone just forgot about it after a while." A chill ran down my spine that had nothing to do with the evening air. The artist, whoever they were, must have painted the house before the window was covered. They captured a moment in time, a version of my house that had been intentionally erased and forgotten. The painting wasn't just a piece of art, it was a witness. It was the only thing that remembered the window. We decided to keep the window. It lets in beautiful afternoon light, and honestly, the story is just too good. Sometimes, when I'm working in my office, I look out that window into the woods. I've never seen a face, and I hope I never do, but I'm grateful for that dusty old painting. It didn't just show me a window. It showed me that every house has secrets, and sometimes you just need the right map to find them. Thanks so much for watching our strange little adventure unfold. If you love stories about hidden histories and everyday mysteries, make sure to hit that subscribe button and ring the bell so you don't miss what we uncover next. See you in the next video.